Today's topic is going to be about subterfuge, what it means, how Forrest has used it, how he has not used it, the famous quotes from mysterious writings, a couple scrapbooks where he has used that word, and the recording that I did with the New York Times, and how he actually identifies the subterfuge that he uses in some of his interviews. The dictionary says the word means deceit used in order to achieve one's goal. Synonyms are trickery, intrigue, deviousness, evasion, and deception. The most commonly used quote regarding subterfuge that Forrest said was back in June of 2014 on Mysterious Writings, when he answered a question and said, "The poem is straightforward with no subterfuge in sight." Another often used quote that Forrest gave came from Mysterious Writings a couple months before that, where he answered Ron's question if the blaze can be found during the day without a flashlight. Forrest said, "If there is no subterfuge intended in your question, then I would say yes." In between those two quotes, in July of 2014, Forrest wrote Scrapbook 86 called "Fun is Where You Find It." He talks about standing on the stool in front of the kitchen sink, singing an aria as he washed the family's dishes. He mentions that subterfuge was a great life lesson for me, and over the years it has manifested itself in ways that have allowed me to stay positive. Then in April 2017, Forrest wrote Scrapbook 180 titled "The Unfortunate Hiccup." He talks about the guy with the flask and how he would take a swig as he pretended to look through his binoculars. Forrest wrote, "It was a subterfuge that very effectively disguised his odd drinking practice." Next, I'm going to play a couple minutes from the New York Times interview where Forrest talks about searching on private property and how he intentionally uses subterfuge to throw people off during some of his interviews.
I got an email from this gal yesterday that said a man and his wife threw them off their land up in Montana. She's madder than hell because she knows the treasure's there, but why don't these people let me come in and get the treasure off their land?
So when you hear about people doing things like going into other people's property, it seems to me that you would not be the one who would, and you told me that in the email we had, that you would not, that it's not a treacherous terrain, that it's not a dangerous, you wouldn't put people in a dangerous situation to have to get this treasure. What do you think leads people to think that you would hide it in somebody's property, under a building that somebody lives in, or in...
Fernando, you have to define the terms. If you rent a cabin up in Wyoming on a river, what are you renting? Are you renting the front yard and the backyard, or are you just renting the building, or what? Are you renting the driveway that goes into there? So if somebody hid a treasure on a driveway and in the backyard of a cabin they were renting, is that legal or not? I mean, it's mine for 24 hours, isn't it? I mean, I use that as a subterfuge to throw you off.
But you know that people are going to read that, and they're going to think that that's a clue that you're giving to them.
And there are 100 different case scenarios. Like the government has easements on private property to go in. So if you buried it on an easement, then, I mean, it would take a jury to decide the legalities of some of these things.
Mm-hmm.
Part of the area includes national parks, national forest, maybe Indian land. What have you figured out if the treasure is found in those areas? Who owns it?
This is not something that I jumped into superficially. I mean, I tried to think of everything. My feeling is, if you can find a treasure chest, you can have it.
But if I find the treasure and it's in a national park, don't I have to share it with Uncle Sam?
I spent a bunch of money with a lawyer to figure out the question about who owns it, if it's found on public land, on private property, or on Indian land. And there's all kinds of answers. If it's found in a national park, according to my attorney, the person that finds it is required to take it to the park superintendent. The rules are different if you find it on private property. If you find it on Indian land, it really gets complicated.
And the person who finds it has to deal with the legal questions.
Well, if there's a legal question, yeah. What if there's not a legal question? My argument is the person that finds it is going to own it.
Okay, what did we learn from this video? In my opinion, we learned that Forrest did not hide the treasure chest on private property where he puts a searcher in danger. We learned that Forrest likes to use subterfuge when he does media interviews and talks about renting a cabin, hiding the treasure on the driveway, or other government-owned pieces of the private property, including easements and such. He says it would take a jury to decide the legalities if he hid it in such a place. But then on the CBS Sunday Morning interview, he ends it with, "What if there's not a legal question?" I hope you enjoyed this video as part of Cynthia's Winter Games 2020 series. Let the search season begin.